Welcome to 28 Days and Beyond.
The show where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture.
I'm Amari.
I'm Charisma. Hello.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm okay.
Good.
Walk with me. Some historians, some environmentalists, ecologists predict that the next world war is going to be over water.
Wow.
Drinkable water, what they call potable water, is a scarce resource. A place like America, or the so-called developed world, if they say, has access to water.
Except for Detroit.
Well, isn't that interesting? That's actually a very interesting conversation. But the point is that, like, even the infrastructure around bringing pipes and water to your house and so on
is readily available.
That is not the majority that is not the norm for the vast majority of people on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that?
I think about it often.
Yeah.
Being a person that, I consider myself an empath, I often feel and think about how other people are impacted, how much we take for granted. There are things that I feel like every human should have access to, like every human walking the face of this earth should have access to. One of those things is water.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally need it to survive. So the fact that there are tons of people all over the world that don't have access to something that is required to just live as a basis is outrageous.
Outrageous. I mean, and again, this is the vast majority of people.
Yeah.
It's access to clean and drink, clean, safe drinking
Safe
water,
water, yeah.
right? And then, of course, what is the impact to society? And what's really interesting is the more we dive into this subject, you see it's not just, it's obviously the immediate health,
Yeah.
but how else does it impact the institutions of society? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very far-ranging problem.
Yeah.
That there are people who are trying to address it, but it's much greater than, like I said, vast majority of people.
If you think about how many people are impacted by it, it should be something that's talked about daily.
Yeah.
And then aside from just talking about it, it's like, okay, now what are we doing to help fix this issue?
And you made a comment about Michigan. Then you have to see, how does power play into this, right? Because those who are impacted are deemed to be less significant, quite honestly, than others. Today we're joined by Avery Smith, who is a filmmaker with GlassRose Films, and she's completing a documentary about water access in Tanzania. So she'll be here to join us to talk about that and so much more when we come back to 28 Days and Beyond. Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond. We're joined now by Avery Smith.
Hello.
Repping GlassRose Films.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about GlassRose Films.
So GlassRose Films is a student-run production company out of Villanova University. We are comprised of 21 students now, but we are on a mission to get clean water wells in 2 villages in Tanzania. Singida, Tanzania is a very rural, arid region of Tanzania, and so we visited Tanzania to, I guess, take a look into the water crisis and really talk to people and understand what's going on in Tanzania.
So what was really the spark to make you want to go into the journey of finding out more about places like the region of Tanzania where you visited?
So I've always been really interested in public health, and especially on a global level. So that's kind of the big reason that made me join the class, because I knew where we were going and I knew I wanted to be a part of it. We went in October for 2 weeks, and it was a very grueling but very exciting process of a whole bunch of students. 15 of us went on the trip. No idea how to do anything related to film at all, no media production experience, no camera experience, nothing like that. Just trying to record stories so that we can share them with people back home.
Trial by fire, huh? So before we get into the specific stories, just sort of give us an overview of the water crisis.
So the water crisis affects everyone. I think that that's a big misconception, that it's like, oh, it's these specific countries in Africa that, but there's issues of water scarcity domestically. And I think that that's something that we all have to think about, is our own personal water usage. Although the majority of water usage, that clean water usage, comes from industry, it's still something that on a personal level you can think like, do I really need to be running the water? Do I need to take this long of a shower? Things like that. So that's not really water access, but that's more like conservation of water. But I still think that that's important in terms of how we use water and think about water.
That's interesting.
You know, one of the things that Charisma had addressed Michigan, and they were saying that in terms of like, you know, corporate water usage, they were saying that if I don't know if you remember, Detroit was going in and basically shutting people's water off for delinquent bills. They said that if the Detroit Lions and a country club were to pay their water bills, it would cover more than enough for the revenue for this. But they decided to focus on the individuals. I think that's a really important intervention that you're saying, that on the one hand, we all do play a part, but in terms of the larger power structure, this is really an issue where there are forces greater than ourselves that are impacting the lives of individual people. What were some of the things that you saw in Tanzania?
So we visited a few different villages. We ended up visiting one village called Kujatejima. That village has a water well, so it was interesting to kind of see the contrasting a village with no water and a village with water. And so one of the villages with no water we went to was called Malolo, and just going to that village and seeing the women dig up water from the ground every day, waking up so early and needing to use the water for obviously daily things like bathing, cooking, all these different things, feeding the cattle, and just knowing that they would just have to wait there until the water came back up. It was very difficult emotionally to kind of see that, because I feel like water should be a basic human right. It shouldn't be something that is water's sold in a way that it's just hard, because there's all these water bottles here and all these different things, but there's like people who genuinely don't have water and they have to walk very, very far distances to try and find a different place to get water. So that was kind of difficult to watch that, obviously getting closer and closer with the people there day by day and just hearing their stories and knowing that they need something just as basic as water that we all take for granted.
Yeah,
wow.
That is something we take for granted.
When we come back, I'd like to dive deeper into the story.
Yes.
And really more about this film that you're working on.
Yes.
But right now, we'll take a break and we'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond after this. We're back on 28 Days and Beyond with Avery Smith. So before the break, we were talking about, you know, the work that you've been doing in Tanzania. Tell us about the film that you're working on.
So the film is super exciting. It's titled From the Ground Up, and it will be released in late April. Our co-directors, Will and Trent, have been integral parts of helping this film come together because of their vision. They were in the documentary class the year prior, so they kind of have a little bit more knowledge in terms of producing a documentary. And so we're doing an observational documentary about one specific woman, and in doing that, it helps us see her daily activities, and it'll help people be able to compare their daily activities with water and how they interact with water every day.
So what was the decision like in terms of figuring out, you know, you have this broad topic of water, making sure that people have water that they can use to drink, to bathe, to feed the cattle, a number of things. What was the journey like going from that broad topic to working specifically with this one woman and following her journey specifically? Right,
so we went to the villages of Malolo and Jamida. Those were the villages where we talked to people that didn't have water. And so kind of talking, I'm on the multimedia team, I'm the director of multimedia. So within multimedia, we were trying to highlight different stories. So we were just interviewing as many people. So many people would just come up to us and be like, hey, can I get interviewed? And we were just interviewing a lot of people while we were on the ground. So her story is very compelling, but it's also, she's a pillar in the community. She was very excited to talk to us and kind of show us her daily routine. And I think that she's just the embodiment of that village. Like, she just has a lot of great qualities, and she was a great person, like super outgoing. And I think it was very easy for us to kind of talk to her and have a film about her because of she gathers water at the hole. Like, she does a whole bunch of different things that I guess the community, everybody does there. So it was just easy to talk to her. So.
What are some of the far-ranging impacts of this lack of access to clean water?
So a lot of it can be like disease. obviously it's a big health issue. We all need water to live and to survive, and it's hard when they don't have, potable water. They have water that they're digging from the ground. There's, dirt mixed in, there's flies. In Jamida, the village that we went to that's in a different location in Singida, that village has a huge, it's hard to describe, it's like a huge crevice, and the women kind of throw buckets down with a rope and get it, but they also have to bring their cattle down to the same place. So the cattle are drinking out of the same water that the people are gathering water. Sometimes people bathe there because it's easier than taking water out and then bringing it to a different location. So the water source is just the same exact. It's not like how we think of running water and it's different in each place. It's all the same water source. So I think that was something that
wow.
it's hard to think
And how
about.
do they prepare the water that they bring from the ground?
So I think coming back to the U.S., we've gotten this question a lot because we're talking to a lot of people about our film and our production company, and they're like, well, how do they filter the water? They don't. Like, there's no, it's literally just from the ground, and whatever's there is what has to be used. And if there's no water there, the burden falls on women and girls a lot of the time, so they'll have to walk hours, like just so far just to get water, and they'll be gone for 2 days. Something that I found interesting was that school children have to bring at least like 1 bucket of water to school because there's no running water in the schools. So they'll need to, take the water to use the bathroom or wash their hands or do different things around the school. So mothers have to prepare for that to get a 1 water bucket, and they won't be allowed to go to school if they don't have that. So it affects a lot of different areas in life, but I think health, education, just basic sanitation, like things like that are just really hard.
So one of the things that you mentioned was you went to a village where they did have a well, and
Right.
you were able to see that a well really could transform the lives of these
Right.
villages. And as you're saying, it could stretch beyond that. Part of your goal is to raise $90,000
Yes.
for a well for each of these villages. Tell us a little bit more about that and how our viewers can contribute.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'd
so
love to help.
this is a goal that we're really excited about. We talked about it a lot on the ground, and made sure that the people in the villages, this is something that they wanted, because we had gone to one village, a Maasai village, that they said we don't like the water that they have, and we do still go to a different place because the composition of the water was very salty, they explained it, but the chemicals that the people that installed that well put in that water, they weren't, they didn't like it. So we talked to the people in the villages, and they said all we would like are these wells. So that's something that we're super excited to bring to them. $90,000 is obviously a huge feat, but we have all social media platforms, and so at GlassRose Films, people can look at our Instagram. We have Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, all different sorts of things, and we're partnered with the Chris Long Foundation. They build water wells in Tanzania, and so directly on their page, we're a group, so waterboys.org/GlassRose Films, and you can just donate directly there, and just keep up with us on Instagram because we have a lot of content and posts coming up. So.
Well, we're definitely looking
Thank
forward
you
to
so
the film.
much.
You said in late
Yeah.
April. We should
Late
be
April,
expecting.
yes,
That's great.
we'll be premiering
Avery,
it. Yes.
thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you
us
so
and
much for
sharing your
having
story.
me.
Yeah.
We'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond right after this.
And we're back with more 28 Days and Beyond. I'm inspired.
I am too.
I mean, like, I have been privy to some of the footage of that film. I must say that it is, Avery described it really well, and even in them, we're like, we can't picture it, because the things that you'll actually see are like, wow, this is real life. You know what I mean?
I think the thing that impacted me the most that Avery shared was the fact that children weren't able to go to school without bringing water.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
just think about, putting that level of responsibility on children
Yeah.
in order to get an education, like, it really just ups the stakes in terms of like how much of a wide impact having running water really can
Yeah.
have.
And so now it's impacting education.
Yeah.
If you don't have the water, you can't go to school.
Right.
Right.
It's major.
And then she's also talking about, a lot of the burden falls on women and girls to get the water. So I just think it's in many ways a dire situation that, as you were alluding to, unfortunately won't become dire for a lot of us because we have access. We'll be taking
Right.
these long showers and letting the water run while we,
While we're brushing
doing
our
something else.
teeth
Right,
or like
exactly,
doing the dishes, just, you know.
And I think a fair point she made was like, yeah, and that's obviously very important, our individual contribution, but that's not the whole of the story, right?
Right.
There are, other factors at play. But at the very least, I think being able to share this story of what's happening in Tanzania, because Tanzania is not the only place.
No,
right?
it's
This
not,
is one place where that's
unfortunately.
happening.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think it's quite a noble cause. And say, like these wells will literally transform the lives of these people. So she's talking about, women will come out in the morning, dig a hole, and wait for the water to come up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, having cattle drink the same water, that it's so much.
Yeah.
My heart.
Definitely so.
But I can't wait to see the film.
Well, the film, late April.
Yes.
We'll certainly provide our viewers with
Absolutely.
information about that, how they could support, which is very important. And yeah, I really look forward to seeing, what comes of this film.
Me too.
This has been another episode of 28 Days and Beyond.
Where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture. We'll see you next time.